So when it comes to manifesting your dream life, living your dream life, the way you truly desire to live, it is helpful to keep into consideration one key concept. This key concept literally means the difference between a path riddled with resistance and the path of least resistance. See, you are already that which you desire to be. You found it in the form of desire. You just desire to become more of who you already are in form. All that you desire, thus, you are, whatever it may be, which are symbols of that infinite love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment that you already are. You found it in that still I am presence. In that still I am presence, you can say you feel like yourself. Or we could say you are being like yourself. Or as I've been saying, you are being as you are. And as a result of being as I am, what I notice is that I could clearly witness what I suggest in relation to appearances. So the key concept is suggestion. See, the individual, as they relate to people, environment, circumstance, information, and I'll pull up on my screen here the modified version of the Robert Dilts logical levels. I put the I on the top to articulate the point. You transcend this world. You exist as perfection. You are that already, that perfect love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. You as the individual receive desire from the source. And that desire is prayer, like we talked about in Sunday's video. If you haven't seen it, I'll link in the description to it, as articulated by Joseph Murphy. Desire is prayer. Now, why is desire prayer? Well, prayer is acknowledgement of who you already are. It is an acknowledgement of what you already have. Mark 11:24. Pray as though ye have received it, and it will be yours. It says, received whatsoever things ye desire. So, the desires of the heart point to the truth that you are already that. So, you can imagine yourself to be who you desire to be. Thus, you have a vision. In Think and Grow Rich, he called it definite chief aim. Definite chief aim. Now, what transforms, as you know, that you are that already, which you desire to be, are all these layers here in the Robert Dilts logical level. So again, you transcend all of this. You can have this vision today and then actualize it tomorrow. And tomorrow you have another vision, whatsoever things you desire. And then you actualize it a week from now, a month from now, etc. Yet you remain the same as perfection. So it's not you are perfect if you actualize the vision or not. If you have this material possession or not. If you look like this, or you look like that, or you dress like this, or you dress like something else, whatever trend. If you follow a trend or not, it does not make you perfect because of these things. You are the perfection. That still I am presence that witness all these things as perfection. And as you are transcended to those appearances, you, knowing who you are, as bliss, experience in consciousness your real nature, which is bliss, Ananda. I like the word Ananda because the word Ananda in Sanskrit has a number of meanings that we use English language to describe, yet we might not use it in the same context. Ananda can be translated into bliss, happiness, peace, joy. Those words can describe different things to the individual. They might say, I'm at peace. Another person, I am happiness, or I am feeling bliss, or I am feeling joy. Yet all of those naturally arise for the human being individually. They naturally arise as a result of knowing who they are. Now, the individual may condition the love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment that they are in mind. So conditions, thus, can only be placed in mind. You are that which is prior to the condition. You are unconditional love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. Yet the individual might not believe that. They may say, well, Joseph is just suggesting this. I don't believe it, which is fine. You don't need to believe me. You realize this along the way. Everything appears to transform or rearrange, yet you remain the same. And you may describe the experience of being as you are as love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, yet it's not based on these appearances. It's not because your identity changed. It's not because the capabilities, the behaviors, the environments change. You don't change. It just appears like the individual changing, which belongs to, we call the identity. Now, the identity naturally shifts as a result of being who you are. You are that pure awareness witnessing all these things, which includes people, environment, circumstance, information, or with respect to the Robert Dilts logical levels in relation to environments, behaviors. Behaviors means what you do, what you don't do, capabilities, skill cultivation, etc., environment. All of these things naturally transform in flow. They naturally rearrange in flow. You naturally let them be as you abide as you are, that pure awareness, knowing your real nature to be bliss or ananda, bliss, happiness, peace, joy. And body flows, everything appears to flow. That's the description of being in flow. While in flow, I trust you witness this, body appears to flow, everything appears to flow, conversations appear to flow. There's no suppressing or repressing of emotions. They are transmuted. Speaking of which, on my other channel, if you haven't seen that video, I did a discussion on sexual transmutation. If you're interested in more discussions on sexual transmutation, leave a comment and we'll discuss in upcoming videos as here as well. I spoke about it in the context of transmuting that energy, not suppressing or repressing this powerful energy, sexual energy, yet transmuting it over to the various initiatives on the entrepreneurial journey, which is prospecting, lead generation, client acquisition, innovation, sales, marketing, operations, finance, leadership, optimization, automation, delegation, elimination, part or in whole or in combination, as I refer to in my book. If you're interested in that, I'll link in the description to it. All of these things happen naturally in flow, and the energy that compels you to do all these things naturally without force, the path of least resistance, is not suppressed or repressed, rather transmuted. That's what Napoleon Hill called sexual transmutation. If you're interested in that, I'll link in the description to it. So all these things appear to transform. Body appears to transform. What you say, what you don't say, how you act, what you don't act, what action you take, what action you don't take. That is a common question that I get. What about action? Action happens naturally in flow. It's not like you're trying to do this or that. It happens naturally in flow. And flow is the natural result of being who you are. And the natural result of being who you are is knowing who you are. You are that which is prior to the environment, beliefs, capabilities, values and beliefs, identity, vision, which appear to transform. They appear to transform to reflect who you are more so, with increasing frequency on a continuous basis. This has been happening to me since I started this journey back in 2004. Along the way, I've built 3 successful businesses, transformed my relationships, health, fitness, the various areas of my life. I did not imagine that I was living the life that I'm living now when I started this journey. I just wanted to get out of $50,000 debt. And as a result of committing to that vision, it happened. So this is where the suggestion part comes in, and what I mean by path of least resistance along the way. Because you're already that which you desire to be. Some way, somehow, it happens. Again, the questions I get is, what should I do? What should I not do? Should I do this? Should I do that? What about emotions? What about thoughts? We've been discussing this now from many different perspectives for many years. I actually have a video which was inspired by Lester Levinson and Emmett Fox. I called it the 7-Day Mental and Emotional Diet. If you're interested in that, I'll link in the description to it. Essentially, you let the emotions be naturally in flow. You let the thoughts be naturally in flow. You are that pure awareness that witnesses all these things, yet you are beyond identification to them. It's just the individual that identifies with this or that belief in relation to the emotions, in relation to whatever appearance. So the individual is suggesting what the appearances mean to them. Even if I, as I am right now, having this conversation with you, you're suggesting what this means to you. You're suggesting if it's confusing, if it makes sense, if it helps you, if it doesn't help you. If you're suggesting, you may not be suggesting. You may suggest this, you may suggest that. The same is to be said about any information that you consume. People may say this, the information may say that, yet you suggest in relation to the information how it relates to you. If it's not from the premise of you already being that which you desire to be, you know it's not truth. Truth, consciousness, bliss, Satchit Ananda. You are that existing as consciousness, bliss, happiness, joy, peace. So why would you accept any suggestion that does not represent you? That would result in resistance along the way, as you are not being as you are. I've said this many times. You just desire in this life to know and be who you are. That's it. If I ask anyone, and I've spoken with thousands and thousands of people over the years, not just in consulting and in business, but I've spoken to people when I'm out and about, and they'll all say the same thing. They just might say it differently. But they're pointing to the fact that all they desire is to know who they are and be who they are. Now, every individual desires this. So those that know who they are and be as they are naturally play out as harmonious relationships, friendships, etc., as they let the other person be naturally, and the other person lets them be naturally in flow. So we can call that flow-based relationships. Now, along the way, all these things transform. Environments, behaviors, capabilities, values, beliefs, identity, all of these things transform to reflect a vision which represents the desire of the heart of you already being that which you desire to be. You are that love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. Yet that could sound abstract. What does that mean? You are love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. That love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment that I refer to is that pure awareness witnessing this conversation beyond the individual in mind suggesting it means this or that. That is you, and you know who you are in the silence. During meditation, for example. While in flow, for example. So you can know and be who you are in flow. For example, right now I'm looking at the mountains. In a number of months, it'll be covered in snow, and I'll be snowboarding. So while I'm snowboarding in flow, I know who I am. I'm being as I am. I can say, oh, this is exactly where I desire to be, if you ask me. Yet I'm not trying to be there. And if someone says to me, wouldn't you rather be wherever else? I'll say no. this is exactly where I desire to be. Well, I might not say it that way, but this is what is being pointed to over the years as a result of not identifying with particular suggestions in relation to whatever appears. Mind became purified, and the natural result of that is all these things added onto you, whatever they represent to you, whatever represents that love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment that you are. So yes, if I say you are love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, the mind may conjure up what that looks like in imagination, which is perfectly fine. As mentioned, you desire to be who you desire to be. You desire to have what you desire to have, and you are already that which you desire to be. You already have what you desire. You conjure up in your imagination naturally, without trying, without force. You naturally imagine yourself. You experience in your imagination that which you desire to be. And that is the suggestion. And that is placed upon the subconscious mind. And then some way, somehow it happens. Along the way, there may be resistance. What is generating that resistance? Well, let's explore what Napoleon Hill said in Think and Grow Rich with respect to autosuggestion, the chapter Autosuggestion. He said, autosuggestion is a term which implies to all suggestions and all self-administrated stimuli which reaches one's mind through the five senses. Stated in another way, autosuggestion is self-suggestion. It is the agency of communication between the part of the mind where the conscious thought takes place and that which serves as the seat of action for the subconscious mind. So you have a mind. You are prior to the mind. You are that pure awareness, and you have a mind. You have a Garden of Eden, we can call it that way. And within the Garden of Eden, you have the conscious and the subconscious. Now, the subconscious mind also contains the beliefs, the memories, and you are aware of what is in the subconscious mind. You are aware of what is in the subconscious mind. It may sound like a mystery, like what is in the subconscious mind? Well, you know what is in the subconscious mind based on what is called involuntary autosuggestion. Again, we're relating to the word suggestion. Involuntary autosuggestion. I learned that from a wonderful book called Suggestion and Autosuggestion by William Walker Atkinson. And so he says that involuntary autosuggestion is where the individual impresses suggestion upon themselves without intending to do so. Now, this makes perfect sense. So we can say unknowingly, without knowing who they are, they suggest limitation. This is how all these limitations are formed in the first place. An individual is relating to what a person says, an environment, capabilities, behaviors, circumstance, information, and they suggest, they place in mind, involuntary autosuggestion. They place in mind, the subconscious aspect of mind, those particular thoughts, and then they play out as theater. They form beliefs which play out as theater. So if someone says, for example, you can't do this, you can't do that because of this or that reason. This is how it works, and this is not how it works for this or that reason. Without questioning, they might accept that suggestion, which proves the point that they are the only suggester in mind. So only you can suggest. Now, in Think and Grow Rich, he's speaking about conscious autosuggestion, and William Walker Atkinson contributes to that by saying involuntary autosuggestion. So just as an individual can consciously suggest what they relate to the appearances so they can remain in the flow, they can also witness before identifying with in mind any kind of involuntary autosuggestion. And by not identifying to that involuntary autosuggestion, what happens is mind is purified. And as mind is purified, what naturally flows is your natural way of being. So you know who you are in the silence. You are that still I am presence in the silence. You are beyond the thoughts. You are beyond the emotions. You are beyond the body. You are beyond the world. You are beyond the environments, the behaviors, the capabilities, the values and beliefs, the personal identity. And you can imagine this, or you can imagine that if you exist here in perfect peace. You are peace. You are that peace. You are that bliss. You are that happiness. You are that joy. Without needing anything, you are that. And as you abide as that, what happens is it naturally permeates the body. Bliss for no reason, we can say happiness for no reason, peace for no reason, joy for no reason, or beyond reason, as you are beyond reason. Now, the individual has the ability to suggest in mind how they relate to whatever, thought, emotion, behavior, environment, whatever. What I say, what I don't say, what a person says, what they don't say. You have the ability to suggest what that means to you. And you can suggest anything. So the individual unknowingly, not knowing who they are, they may be suggesting. And even if the suggestions are not helpful, just because they think that, and Napoleon Hill and William Walker Atkinson talks about this as well, the individuals that appear to be authoritative. So again, this is another suggestion. They suggest that this person is authoritative, whoever it may be. So I'm going to just listen to this person, whatever this person says. If this person says, you must do this, you must not do that, that's how you get what you want. Even if it doesn't feel right, they bypass that, and it doesn't seem to work. The person in mind is suggesting this authoritative figure, which they perceive as an authoritative figure, knows the answers, and whatever they say, they just accept that suggestion without questioning it. So the key is to be aware of what you are suggesting in relation to what anyone says, information, environments, behaviors, capabilities, and if it's not from the premise of truth. Personally, I recommend not suggesting that to yourself. By not suggesting it to yourself, a number of things happen. Mind gets purified from whatever belief that was generating this involuntary autosuggestion. Reactive, another way of saying it. Person just reacts. Mind gets purified from that. Why this is helpful also is I receive, I don't know how many DMs and emails about this. What do I do with regards to news? What do I do with all this information that I'm getting? And I said, you could do whatever you'd like with it. It's all in your favor. You can witness all this information, and in mind, you could relate to it harmoniously, ideally. You have the ability to think for yourself. You can consciously suggest how you relate to it. You can see opportunities within that information, if you would like to. And they say, yeah, I react a lot to it. And I said, that's okay. No shame, no condemnation. That reactivity is bringing awareness to the beliefs stored in the subconscious mind that can be released. And they're like, how do you know? And I said, you are aware of what you think. You are aware of your behaviors. You are aware of how you emotionally relate. And they say, yes. And I said, that's how you know what is stored in the subconscious mind. Whatever's stored in the subconscious mind that's not from truth, pointing to truth, you can release. And then the question is, how do I know it's from the premise of truth? How do I know if it's not pointing to truth? And I say, does it feel right? You are that love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. You know who you are in the silence. You are that unconditional love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. These beliefs are conditions placed upon consciousness. You have the opportunity to purify the mind by no longer identifying to those suggestions. And if you don't do it, the body, the individual, just goes along with whatever, like a yo-yo, to that information. So let's say, for example, some information appears on the news. Now all of a sudden there's a lot of resistance, and they're on the path of more resistance. And they're doing things that they wouldn't consciously do, and they're not aware of it until they become aware of it. They might go out looking for conflict, start complaining about things not being in their favor. They may start feeling confused, emotional turmoil. They may appear to be distracted, we can say it that way, from their vision. As you are aware of all this appearing, environments, behaviors, capabilities, what you say, what you don't say, what you do, what you don't do, body, etc., being in flow, not in flow, as you are aware of it, as you know that you are that perfection prior to the individual identifying with this or that suggestion in relation to the information presented, which, if identified with, results in flow restriction or whatever. In other words, they're not being who they truly desire to be. And they're being honest with themselves. So congratulations if you're aware of it to this point. Now you have practically realized that you have all the power. You have practically realized that you have all the power if you notice that if you watch news or you read information or you have a conversation with a person, and then all of a sudden you don't feel right and you start acting in a way that is not in alignment with who you are, congratulations. You are aware of that. Prior to that, the individual might not have known, and they might just have went along with that programming, which plays out as theater. Now, in that moment, they cannot identify. Let the emotions release. Do not identify with whatever kind of involuntary autosuggestion. And how do you know if it's an involuntary autosuggestion? Well, all of a sudden, there are thoughts appearing in mind that are not from the premise of love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, and identified with them. The individuals may say, I'm going to go and argue with this person, get in conflict, go and fight with this and that. And I say, without shame and condemnation, what does that have to do with actualizing your vision? Would you consider that honestly to be flow-based? Is that what you truly desire to do? Again, no shame, no condemnation when I ask the question. In that moment, they have clarity in that moment. They say, yeah. They access peace in that moment. They had released identification to those particular thoughts. And what's amazing, as a result of not identifying with that involuntary autosuggestion, which again spawns from those subconscious beliefs stored in the subconscious mind, which can be released by not identifying with those involuntary autosuggestions. What naturally happens is there are no thoughts of not being that which they desire to be in mind. There are no thoughts of them not having what they desire in mind. Emotions regulate, nervous system regulates. They naturally let go of that identification. They naturally trust that things work out in their favor. In that moment, they know who they are, and from the premise of knowing who they are, they can be who they are. And then these areas continue to transform as they were always transforming: the identity, the values and beliefs, capabilities, behaviors, environment. Now they're transforming on the path of least resistance, we could say it that way, because that's how they describe it. I say, do you have any resistance? No resistance. No thoughts of resistance? No. No emotions of resistance? No. No stifling of energy in your body? Body still feels stiff? No. What about the people in your life? Oh, and all of a sudden they have wonderful things to say about them. I said, what about those problems that you said you had? You had problems. You had challenges. Oh, there are actually opportunities. I see how there is opportunity. So in other words, you transmuted the challenge into an opportunity. Or we could say it another way, you discovered the opportunities that are always there, as you did not suggest that that was a challenge in a way that holds you back. that you need to do all this stress and force-based hard work things in order to get what you want. You actually saw an opportunity there that is maybe 1 or 2 steps, and boom, you have the result. And so when you saw the news and they said, and they used particular words that sounded very dogmatic and absolute, like, this is how it is. This is what's going to happen. And as you did not identify with that suggestion in relation to what appears, that information, you naturally saw the opportunities. And then what did you say? What was the kind of thoughts that appeared in your mind? And, they'll say stuff like, well, I see how that can appear that way if they think that way. Yet, there are infinity different ways to think. And trying to think of the infinity ways can seem like a force-based thing to do. What naturally arose was the way to think. And I said, congratulations, you really think for yourself now. You know who you are, you're being as you are, and you are aware of what you think, how you emotionally relate, your behaviors, how you relate to environments, behaviors, capabilities, etc. You know that all these things appear to transform. Identity, values, and beliefs, capabilities, behaviors, environment, mind is purified along the way. You just remain as you are in flow, and you do what I do, which is, as I am aware of what I am aware of what I can identify with in mind, a suggestion. I am aware of if any involuntary autosuggestions appear in mind, and I could choose to no longer identify with it. I could choose to no longer identify with it. You do the same thing, and you remain in flow. Mind is purified. Path of least resistance. And I say, haven't you also found that this gets easier and easier and easier? And they say, yes. When he had articulated in Think and Grow Rich, he mentioned these beliefs are stored in the subconscious mind. And no shame and condemnation to the subconscious mind or these beliefs stored in the subconscious mind. I just no longer identify with them. And as I continued this, exactly what you're doing, along the way, I can honestly say I remain in flow. I identified less with the illusions of lack or limitation, of not being that which I already am, not being who I desire to be. And also, wonderfully, I noticed this as well. I trust you notice this more so. People appear to transform by doing nothing. I don't say anything. I don't do anything. I might say something. I might do something. I may not say something. I may not do something. Yet they appear to transform. And they say, yes, I noticed that with family, with friends, with business partners, etc. And I said, what you also notice is that these things that you might have resisted doing before, and you were confused, should I do this or should I do that? There is none of that. You naturally flow. If it's prospecting in business, you naturally flow. If it's lead generation activities, you naturally flow. If it's client acquisition, sales presentation, public speaking, making content, you naturally flow. You never run out of ideas. If you commit to putting out whatever amount of videos a week and Instagram posts or whatever, TikTok, it just happens naturally in flow. And why is that the case? Well, mind has been purified. All these beliefs that were generating the resistance from doing the things you were naturally going to do anyways, which represent the behavior or the capability aspects, happen. Even the things that you might have asked me what you should not do, etc. You know. It's not because I told you. It's not because I said, well, you have to do it this way or that way. You know what? You know the way. Your way is the best way. Who knows the way other than you? They know their way. They may talk about their way. Certainly, as mentioned, I wrote a book about it, articulating my way. I used to teach this when I would teach the speed reading workshops. Generally, we would use a guide called 80-20 principle, Pareto principle, which again is not absolute or written in stone, but it helps someone who, let's say, tries to consume all kinds of information and just stuff their brain with information. You already know the way. This information that is written by individuals who have actualized their prosperity, of course, they're going to talk about it with conviction. Of course, they're going to talk about it in a way that comes off as authoritative. They might even use particular language that seems to suggest that that is the way. And I've worked with some of these individuals. That's just how they talk. And when I have a conversation with them and say, are you saying that's the only way? They say, no, that's not the only way. But that's just how I talk. I talk that way. So it's up to you to really think for yourself. No matter what a person says, you really think for yourself. You know who you are. You are that still I am presence. You are that perfection. Your real nature is bliss, Satchit Ananda, existence, consciousness, bliss. So now you know what premise to think from, the sure foundation of being, love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. Individual does not know who they are. They look to this world. And even if it does not relate to who they are, they may identify with those thoughts because no shame, no condemnation. They did not take a moment to know who they are. And actually embody, naturally, what permeates the body is love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. You know, some people ask me, how do you come up with these spontaneous decisions and whatever rapidly? And I said, look, I abide as I am. I know that I am that love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. If it doesn't feel right, I don't move forward with it. No shame, no condemnation. In that moment, I know right away. In that moment. How do you know? In flow. In flow, you know. Flow is the natural result of knowing who you are. By knowing who you are, you can be who you are. And the natural manifestation of that for the body, for the individual, is being in flow. You'll naturally do what you love to do. You'll naturally really think for yourself. You'll naturally make decisions. It won't feel like a making decision stress-based. You'll just naturally decide when it's time to decide. No confusion in mind. As you know who you are, naturally it happens. Everything happens naturally, automatically, spontaneously in flow. So what I used to teach in the speed reading workshops to contribute to a step in this direction of not just knowing who you are, you can know who you are in the silence. Yet can you be as you are on what appears as the journey to actualizing the vision with respect to environments, behaviors, capabilities, people, information, etc.? You can be as you are by being aware of, which you are, aware of what the individual thinks in relation to, the I thinks in relation to, and adjust accordingly. If the suggestion is not from the premise of truth, no longer identify with it. So we used to say 80-20 principle, Pareto principle. 20% of the information in the book perhaps is the most relevant to you. Start with that. When you really think for yourself, when you check in with yourself, which happens naturally in flow, that's why I always say remain in flow. Just be in flow and you naturally, automatically check in with yourself without trying to check in with yourself. It just happens. In flow. What happens is you'll just intuitively know what information in the book. We can call that intuitive reading. You'll just intuitively know. You might even find you'll just flip to the page. It's magical like that. Or as you skim through the book, you'll just know the information that resonates and you'll move forward with that. Because you know that every individual that wrote these books are talking about it from the premise of having experienced physically the material results or whatever it may be. And so they wrote a book about it. And they're talking about their way, the way they did their prospecting, lead generation, client acquisition, marketing, business model, etc. And even their philosophy and style. And if you really think for yourself, because you know who you are, you can really think for yourself. What naturally happens is you will discern. You'll just know the 20% of that information that is the most relevant, according to the Pareto principle, if you like the Pareto principle. It'll just naturally happen. Because you know who you are. And you're just being as you are. And you just continue to be more as you are. You could say, become more of who you already are in flow. And so also this manifests as confidence, personal magnetism, charisma, harmonious lifestyle, harmonious friendships, etc. So, in recap, you know who you are in the silence. You just desire to know and be who you are. Now you know who you are. You can be who you are. And you can relate naturally to whatever appears automatically, naturally in flow. Body naturally flows here. Environments naturally change. Behaviors cultivate. Behaviors change if they are to change. I don't know. You really think for yourself in relation to information. You're not swayed by appearances, as you know that you are that which cannot be swayed by appearances. Romans 12:2, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. The mind gets renewed by not conforming, and that could sound like a thing to do. Essentially, you don't conform. You are that pure awareness. That is who you are. You are that bliss. And where do you experience bliss? You experience it in consciousness. Satchit Ananda, existence, consciousness, bliss. So you know who you are. You can be as you are. And if anytime it appears that an involuntary suggestion appears in mind, you can no longer identify with it. The conscious mind, aware of what is brought forth from the subconscious mind to be purified. And if you think, you really think for yourself, thus you impress the subconscious mind with thoughts of being that which you desire to be, which you already are, having what you desire, relating ideally to what appears. And that also happens naturally in flow. And so what happens then is we can call it a harmonious relationship between the conscious and subconscious aspect of mind, and thus bringing forth the superconscious way of life, which is your natural way, which is the natural result of knowing who you are. You are that eternal, absolute, infinite, superconscious, beyond comprehension. Yet you desire to know what that looks like. Otherwise, it just sounds like an interesting concept. You are that love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, infinite, supreme, superconscious, bliss, happiness, joy, fulfillment. It sounds like an interesting concept. It is very interesting. Yet you can experience that in form as the wonderful lifestyle, relationships, etc. And all you do is just no longer identify with those suggestions that don't represent you, and everything flows naturally from the premise of truth. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's conclude this with an auto-suggestion to further encourage. You could say, I know who I am. I am that pure awareness, and my real nature is bliss. Thus I have a body and a mind to experience that which I am in consciousness, that infinite love, infinite happiness, infinite peace, infinite bliss, infinite fulfillment, which through desire stimulates in imagination that which I already am, that which I desire to be. From the premise of knowing who I am and being as I am, I naturally and automatically relate harmoniously to that which appears in flow. Body appears to flow, everything appears to flow, everything appears to be in harmony with me. People, environment, circumstance, information, capabilities, environment, all appear to be in harmony with me as I am in harmony with all. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk with you soon. Take care.